All right, welcome back to Bad Points. We've got Dan Wiggins again, who is the current record holder for the most popular guest. Damn near co-host at this point, but whatever. Neither of us get paid for it, so I guess that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. How you doing, Dan?
Good. All the work, none of the reward.
That's right. That's right. The modern American way.
Hell yeah.
Speaking of all the work, none of the reward, we're going to be talking the leftist Marxist talking points right now, and if they had their way, that's how it would be. So I went to ChatGPT and asked for basically, I don't remember the prompt, but effectively it was, hey, give me some modern leftist American Marxist talking points, what they believe. And then it asked me if I wanted to make a mega list of 50 of them. I said yes. So they broke it down into different topics. So I'll give you the general topic, the classification of the question, and then some of these are so stupid. Like, I don't know. If I ask one that's so stupid that it's obvious, then consider that a challenge.
Got it.
So the first question will be from the economy and class section.
Mm-hmm.
And the claim is wage labor is a modern form of coercion, not true freedom. This one could be considered one that's so stupid that you don't know what to do with it, but give it your best shot.
Well, I mean, the wage labor, the option is you don't work and you don't have anything. That's freedom. Right? And the ultimate freedom is not working, not getting anything. Yeah, you're master your own path, master your own destiny. That's freedom. The option other than negotiating wage is slavery. So I guess if you're opposed to wages for your labor, then you're all for slavery. And that kind of is a very leftist kind of thing. A person has no value, the people are everything. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that one's there's no other option. I think that kind of points to their lack of understanding of why we have things, why people want to make things. It's just a very simple concept there. So
yeah, I mean, there's really three options. You either don't work and have nothing, and that's completely valid. There's a lot of people who do that. It's called the homeless, right? And the U.S. is probably the greatest country in the world to be homeless in, because in a lot of places, the homeless, they die pretty quick unless there's some sort of just handouts to get where they want. Or you negotiate and work out your own wages and you try to get as much as you can for as little output. I mean, because we're all inherently lazy. Oh, right. With things we don't enjoy. So, and then you get where you're on. Or the third one is the government just gives it to you. But then the government can dictate what you're going to get. And more importantly, what you have to do to get it. And that's slavery. So it's either slavery, freedom, or the ultimate freedom, which is you get nothing because you make nothing.
Yeah. I guess their rebuttal would be, it all goes to communism, because the rebuttal, I would assume, would mean, no, we should labor in accordance to what we want to create, what we want to do. If everyone wants to be a musician, then we'll just be musicians. And I don't think they think about the part of, what about the car that you're taking to the gig? What about the guitar that you didn't make? What about the venue that's only there because they're making money? What about, I think that's the reason why that's such a stupid statement, is because when you follow it to its conclusion, I guess it's not stupid to them, because that's what they want. They want communism, because ultimately you're not going to have a country if there's no things being made.
Exactly. I think, it's one of those like perfect fantasies of, wow, I could get, if I could just do whatever I want and have all my needs met, it would be wonderful. And you're right. It would be wonderful if you just do exactly what you wanted to do and you just got compensated fully. The problem is nobody wants to be a person who cleans sewers. Nobody wants to be the guy who repairs power lines in the middle of an ice storm. Nobody wants to be the soldier on the front lines. Nobody wants to be the police officer in the middle of a riot, right? People don't like get up and go, God, yeah, I'm going to get shot at this morning. It's like, I've known lots of soldiers like, that's the last thing I want to do. But if I'm going to do it, I hope I get the other guy first. So that's the problem, is everybody wants to be a musician. Everybody wants to be a poet. Everybody wants to be a philosopher. You don't need very many of those at all. And so you get a lot of other people out there. And under communism, it's kind of like, you know what? You're going to go work in a factory and you're going to operate a metal stamp. I don't want to. We don't care. You either do that or you get zero. So your choice is slavery.
And furthermore, you say nobody wants to crawl around in a septic tank and unclog it for a living, right? But even if there was a person who did, go ahead. I'll finish my point in a minute.
People will do it if they're paid high enough.
Right.
And
Yep.
that means, oh, I'm not going to just live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in a large complex. It's like I own a sewer company, a septic tank company, because I have a nice 4,000 square foot home on 5 acres of land.
Yeah, it's a shitty job, but it's also not a shitty job.
Exactly.
Uh,
It's a shitty job, but it pays really well.
yeah, there you go.
Like
So I
you
was
know,
gonna
'cause
say,
it pays so you could sit on a throne.
yeah, there you go, golden throne like Trump. Another facet to it is one, okay, what if someone was like, I kind of would like to crawl around in a septic tank for a living. That sounds kind of fun. In this situation, the alternative is anything else. Anything. I want to stay at, what would you rather crawl around in the septic tank for no profit every single day or stay at home, do drugs, and have sex? I don't think many people are going to pick the septic tank, especially not enough people to make sure that that's not going to be an issue moving forward.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, the thing is, even if you did want to do the septic tank, under communism, it's like, well, you might not be assigned to do a septic tank because they really didn't care about what you wanted to do, at least in the Soviet Union, at least in China, a lot of those things. They didn't really care about what your desires were. It was more about, hey, we need more of this. Take the next 50 people and make them that job. We need more septic tank cleaners. The next 100 people are tank cleaners. We need more road repair people. Next 1,000 people are road repair people. We need more power linemen. The next 200 people are power linemen.
Yep.
And you're all going to get the same output. You're all going to get the same apartment. You're going to get the same rations of food. You're going to get the same capabilities for transportation, which is almost always public. You're not going to have your own car because you don't earn enough. Your kids are going to go to the same schools. So there's no difference. You know, those who are politically connected, hey, we need people to run a shop or to do accounting. Well, Bob over there, you know, his cousins in the CCP, his cousins in the Politburo, he gets that nice office job, you know.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. So you don't get to choose what you want unless you're politically connected. So in a large ways, the communist approach of you're just assigned a job, you're no longer able to negotiate your own benefits for your own labor, where you're just assigned a job for your labor, and you get your benefits whatever the hell it is. It's much more autocratic, much more dictatorial, and there's zero fairness or freedom in it.
Yeah, you're not a slave for having options. You're a
Correct.
slave for not having options. That's a good way to
Exactly.
sum that one up. This next one, frankly, I don't even completely understand it, but it's not because the Marxist is stupid, it's because I'm stupid. Essential goods like housing, food, and water should not be commodified. I don't have an understanding of commodified. That's my problem.
So they mean like a commodity, or something that you buy and trade. And the reality is, I'm not buying water, right? Because I could I could plunge a well on my own land if I had water underneath it. I could go to a river and pull water buckets out. I could do all that if I wanted to. I'm not buying water. What I'm doing is I'm buying the infrastructure and the delivery systems and the people to make sure the water is clean and to set up all that stuff and maintain all that stuff. That's what I'm doing.
Let me pause you. So the implication here is that housing, food, and water is commodified?
That's their implication. And it's not. Now, water is not a commodity, right?
Yeah.
Delivery of water is a commodity, but that's buying a service, you know? And it's amazing. A lot of people say, oh, we shouldn't have to pay for water. Water should be free because, you know, it's a commodity. I'm like, okay, great. You pay for DoorDash. Well, yeah. You're paying for a service for somebody to pick up food from that restaurant, bring it to you. Well, that's different. No, it's the exact same thing. You're paying somebody to do it. And in most cases, you're paying a local utility. Not many utilities are private. They're almost all quasi-public or fully public, you know? So you're paying the government effectively to commodify, but they're not really. Water's not a commodity. It's much more of it's a free substance that you pay for delivery of. Now, food, this is where it's interesting. It gets into like the fundamental understanding of rights. Like, you know, healthcare is a right, food is a right, housing is a right. And those are all bullshit. And I don't use that term loosely. I use that term in a big stinking heapy pile of it really is bullshit. Because if you're to get food, somebody has to make the food. Somebody has to cook it. Somebody has to prep it. Somebody has to deliver it. Somebody has to pull it out of the fields or slaughter the animals. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to raise the animals. Somebody has to plant the fields. So all that has to go. There's a bunch of labor to get that burger or that pizza or that piece of avocado toast to your table. A whole bunch of people in that chain there. And if you say it's a right that I have to be fed, you have to feed me, that's the same thing as me going up to that same leftist communist and going, guess what? It's my right to have a massage. You must stop for 45 minutes and give me a massage. You have no choice. And if you don't, it's a violation of my rights, and I have the right then to lock you up or have you killed. So You're demanding somebody else's time, which means it's slavery. Rights are things that are not positive to you, they're negative. In other words, somebody cannot stop you from doing something is a right. Somebody has to give you something is not a right, because that inherently forces the person who has to give you to be a slave. The healthcare is a right. No, healthcare is not a right. If healthcare is a right, then you could go to any doctor and demand they treat you at any time, and if they're not paid, that's perfectly fine. Well, that's called slavery. Same thing with housing. You don't have a right to a house. You have a right to an apartment. You have a right to go out and try to build one yourself. If you can get a chunk of land, you can go do that. That's no problem. Nobody can stop me from building my own house. That's a right. Somebody has to give me a house. That's not a right. That's a demand. That's extortion. That's slavery. So it usually comes again from a viewpoint of sloth and envy and just being lazy. And well, I just want to give it to me. No, you don't get it. You know,
I would think the natural pushback to that would be something akin to owning a TV is not a right because I don't require it to live, but I do require housing, water, and food to live. So shouldn't we make that a right so that everyone has their essential goods to live?
no, because again, you don't need housing to live. Probably a quarter of the world's population lives in most what people would call not a house, like a hut or things like that. They don't have a real house, or they live wherever. Food, you don't have a right to go to somebody and say, "Buy me a pizza." You must give me a pizza. That's literally what you're doing when you say, "I have a right to food." Same thing with water. You must buy me a Gatorade. No, I don't have to give you a Gatorade. I can't stop you from going down to the local lake or river or whatever and drinking it, pulling out and drinking it and doing all this stuff. Setting up your own purification system on your own well on your own property. You can do that. That's perfectly fine. I can't stop you from that. That's your right to try to get it, but it's not your right to demand somebody else deliver it. So, and if you feel like, well, then you're limiting my life, I'm not limiting your life. You're limiting my life by demanding I make your life easier. So at the end of the day, if you demand something from me, that's, going to be laughed at, number one. But number two, if you back it up with the force of government, then that's fascism. That's authoritarianism. And that's essentially theft at the end of the day, because it wasn't agreed to on both sides. I look at taxes as kind of, well, they're somewhat voluntary. I might not agree with the tax rates always, but at least I get a voice in who's setting the taxes. And so at least it's somewhat voluntary in that case. We all take a vote and do it together. But you can't demand right to food and water. You don't have a right to it. You have a right to try to access it on your own, but you don't have a right to demand anybody else gets it to you, because that's demanding that other person become a slave. And I thought that the left wasn't about slavery, but as we know, communism and leftism is all about slavery.
It just twists words, which, speaking of, after that explanation from you, it sounds like saying something should not be commodified is just a fancy way of saying, I think we should make everyone else pay for my stuff through the government.
Yeah, it's a way of saying it should be commodified. It should be free. And okay, great. So then if it's free, I get to decide what it is. If you're demanding I pay for it for you, then I get to decide what that is. And so, I've got a couple spare boxes in the back. That's your house. Enjoy.
Yeah. I got some Pringles. That's some
You know,
start for you. You can survive on Pringles.
there you go. And it's like, there you go. Oh, well, that Pringles only lasts me one day. No, that's a week's worth of Pringles. That's all I'm going to give you, because it's my decision.
Yeah.
You don't get to come in and take my wallet and say, I'm going to choose to spend this much money. That's called robbery. It's called theft. So at the end of the day, that's where that ends up.
Okay. This one also this will be the last economy in class one. Capitalism thrives on manufactured scarcity to inflate profits.
It doesn't actually. And this is where people break down with, the understanding of what capitalism is, what a market economy is, what a managed economy is. And a lot of communism was 100% managed economy. They dictated what was built, how much was built, what the price was, and that's just that, right? It doesn't matter. A managed economy, though, can go all the way as far as the U.S. and some of the other more open economies, where there's guardrails put on by the government. Government says, hey, look, if you're charging way too much, yeah, we're going to look into it. If you're dumping things at way below cost to try to market, that's not fair. You're using unfair advantages. But generally, we're, going to just kind of let you do what you want to do. Capitalism is not about maximizing profit. And this is something I use whenever I consult with businesses or even my own business. I don't care how much profit margin I make per product. I don't care how many units I make. I care how many units I sell. I care about how much total dollars end up in my wallet. And sometimes that means I'll sell 100 units at $100 profit a piece, and I'll make me $10,000. Other times it means I'll sell 10,000 units at $1 a piece. I'll make $10,000. But the ideal would be to sell one unit and make $10,000. So I'm going to try to find that curve. However, if I price my stuff too high, other people are going to come in and undercut me, and I can't compete. I'll have no sales.
Free market.
Yeah. So capitalism tends to drive, and one of the best people ever to describe capitalism and talk about it and things like that is Milton Friedman. Phenomenal mind, amazing man. But capitalism ultimately drives efficiency, which is where can I find the maximum total dollars that go into my wallet? And what's that combination in terms of price? Sometimes lowering price will dramatically increase the number of units I sell, and I'm benefit off. Sometimes raising price will increase the number of units I sell, or won't decrease the number of units I sell, which means there's more money there. And if I have more money, yeah, I can. People are like, well, you're just going to buy a bigger car, a bigger house. Let's say I do that. Let's say I buy a bigger house. Let's say I buy a nice new car. That puts money into other people's pockets who built that car, who expand the house, the contractor who builds a bigger pool, things like that. That all goes there. A lot of times, though, the business owner will turn around and say, I'm going to invest it and build new products. I'm going to try to compete and get more. So it actually drives money back into the economy in a very efficient way so that it maximizes the total return. Capitalism is not about maximizing the profit per unit. Capitalism is about maximizing the total profit overall. And that's not price per unit. That's not number of units. That's a combination of the two. So that's where it breaks down. They fundamentally don't understand that it's actually number of units, profit per unit, and then you have to balance against everybody else. If I'm selling a pen for $60 and I'm the only seller in the world of pens, it's great. Somebody's going to buy it. They're going to open it up and say, Jesus, I can make that thing for $3. I'm going to sell them for $40 and undercut him. Well, now I have to compete back and lower my price. And then we have other people who jump in and say, well, I can make it for $250. Suddenly the price dramatically drops. That's what happened with TVs, if you think about it. I bought my family's first color TV in 1987, right? I just finished my freshman year in college. I had some money. I was working a job. Paid $499 for a 19-inch color TV, JCPenney with a rotary knob, right? It was a picture tube. $499. A year and a half ago, we went and bought another TV for one of our spare bedrooms, and it was a 70-inch TV. It was $499. It was a flat panel. Went from a 19-inch
day and night better than the one you bought back then.
Totally. The first phone I bought was I had an old Motorola Tacstar, the big, huge thing with the big antenna, things like that. It was $1,000. And, the last phone I bought was an LG V60 that I paid, $600 for it. But it's a smartphone with massive more capabilities and plays audio and takes pictures on way too much. So the price has dramatically dropped. So capitalism tends to drive innovation because it's seeking efficiencies, and efficiencies come from innovation.
Good answer. This next one, I said that was the last one. This is the last one under economy and class. I have to ask it because I don't understand why they would say this, but maybe you can help me. Maybe you can steel man this for me because I don't get it, and then you can answer to it. Class solidarity across race and gender is the only path to liberation.
Yeah, so what they're trying to do is break down into the class warfare of rich versus poor. Right. And, it's us versus them. It's the whole thing in left versus right, us versus them, black versus white, Asia versus Europe, Europe versus America, Russia versus Ukraine. Everybody, yeah, exactly. Christians and Jews and Muslims, it's all breaking into us and them, that kind of thing. And they're trying to say it's all of us class, the workers of the world unite.
The Labor Party.
Yeah, versus the rich people. And that's a very attractive approach because it's like, wow, look at these guys. I think Elon Musk briefly broke this week a $500 billion net worth because the stocks exploded, right? And people are like, nobody should be worth that much, and that's just not fair, and things like that. And it's attractive. Like, why do those people have billions of dollars and I've got nothing? I'm working, 60 hours a week and barely making it by. And there's so many more of us than them. So it's an attractive approach, right? The problem is, why do the successful get their money? Now, some of them do get their money from corruption. We'll get into that. Most of the successful folks, I don't know if you ever heard of a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Check it out. I don't remember who wrote it, but essentially it was an economist who went through and documented who the millionaires are in the world, in the U.S. in the 90s, early 90s, right? And overwhelmingly, 85% of them were small business owners. Overwhelmingly of that of that group, 75% of them were actual laborers, in that they were plumbers, they were electricians, they were carpenters, they were truck drivers, those kind of people. Those were the people that had built to be $1 million. They paid off their house. They had decent paying middle class jobs. They saved their money. They didn't spend it all over and go on a European vacation every single 6 months. They didn't go and hit every single rave and EDM festival around the U.S. They didn't do all that. They weren't buying $6 Starbucks coffees. And by the time they were in their 50s, they were worth $1 million. And that was the typical millionaire. And people are like, oh, millionaires are bad. Well, no, that's the average millionaire just kind of accumulates there. Like in California, if you had bought a house 20 years ago, you're a millionaire just because of the net worth increase of your house. If you had done absolutely nothing and had lived at absolute subsistence poverty level, but you held on to that house, you'd be a millionaire. So exactly. So the way most people get to be rich is because they save their assets, they accumulate assets, they invest in themselves, usually in their own businesses, not just stock market, and they succeed. Elon Musk, a couple times, he risked it all. He bet basically, he pledged his entire net worth when he got Tesla going and got into some final situations. They looked at him and said, how much you worth? He goes, I'm worth about $1.5 billion. They go, we need $1.7 billion to make your project go. He goes, I will pledge every single dollar I have to make this happen. I'll put myself up as collateral. And if it fails, I'm bankrupt. I own nothing. But if it succeeds, it goes huge. It's the same thing with Bill Gates. It's the same thing with Steve Jobs. It's the same thing with a lot of the guys who started a lot of the big industries. And William Boeing, back in the day of Boeing. In fact, Boeing to this day, every time they release a new airplane, they essentially bet the entire company on it because the cost to develop a new airframe is equivalent to like 4 to 5 years of operating profit of the company. So if that airplane doesn't succeed, they have no money for 5 years. They go bankrupt. But they succeed and their stock keeps going up. So the money they get is a reward for taking the risk and then for driving the project through. The reason I get a lot of the contracts I get is because I have a reputation for just ultimately getting things done, usually in a very creative way. And the more and more that reputation builds, the more and more I built my legacy of doing that, the more and more money I can charge. And that gives me the freedom actually to then hire additional people to work underneath me and offload some of my tasks so that I could focus on even bigger pictures and making bigger deals while they're also getting enriched at the same time. The class warfare breaks down to, again, envy, jealousy. I want what you have. I shouldn't have to work for it. Look at what you got. You don't need all that. Give it to me. And it inherently denies how people get it. Now, I said earlier, there's that class of people like corruption, right? And there are those, Nancy Pelosi, find out how to invest in stocks a couple weeks magically before massive changes happen, right? And or guys who have no experience in any kind of an industry, but suddenly they've got this $200 million government contract handed to them. Sole source, just go and do it, and here's the money, go for it. That happens a lot. And that's corruption. And that's literally taking money out of my pocket, out of your pocket, out of those class workers united pockets, the tax dollars, and giving it to another person. And that's unfair. But what's enabling it is a large government. The government has the ability to pick and choose winners by hiding money here and hiding money there. We're going to go ahead and put $1 billion into this NGO over here, and this non-governmental agency that's supposed to do good works, but we know that $200 million of it's going to go to my cousins or my daughter or, things like that. Like we see a lot of that, nepotism happens. Nepotism exists, corruption exists because government has enough power and enough coercive force to make it profitable and make it happen. The way you stop nepotism, the way you stop corruption, the way you stop it is to scale back government where it doesn't have the strength of the ability to do it. But that means smaller government means I'm more independent. I can't rely on government to give me everything. Well, I don't like that. I want to get everything. So I want a big government. I don't care if other people are ripping us off as long as I get what I want. So it's very much a bad attitude. But that's the whole thing. It's not class warfare. There's really two classes that you need to look at. Those who are willing to work for it and are willing to try to push to succeed, and those who just want to lay and say, just give it to me.
Yeah.
And those who are overwhelmingly pushing a class warfare, it's us versus them, the capitalists are taking everything like that. Those are the ones who don't want to work for it. Those are the ones who want to be the poets, the musicians, and the philosophers, and the artists of the world for a living. You're a musician. The number of musicians that I've met, I would say over 99.95% of them, maybe 5 out of 10,000 are not asking me, and would you like fries with that?
Right.
And that's not a slam. That's not a slam. There's so many talented music. I like your music. I like, a lot of people, Will Harris, Van Plating, Matt Moran, a lot of the guys, in that group, I like a lot of their music. Cody Penn, for instance. Hey, shout out to Cody. Cool guy. I mean, he used to be a punk rocker, back in the day. Phenomenal musicians, but there's so much competition out there that you have to be so stunningly good or so amazingly lucky in a connection. You're not going to succeed as a musician. That's just flat out the way it is.
Not financially.
Not financially, exactly.
You could be the most successful person in the world on the inside. I love what I do. I got a couple of fans, but you're
Yeah.
not gonna make the millions
Yeah.
of dollars you thought you were when you were 17.
Exactly. To be a successful, financially successful musician is probably one of the luckiest things in the world, and I would say it's even being luckier than getting chosen to go to the NFL draft or the NBA draft, because at least there it's like, a straight up one-on-one competition, straight up football. It's like, that's hard to do. But there are so many people who can write amazing songs, and there's so many people who could play music way better than actual stars can. That's what studio musicians do. They actually play the instruments and play the song better than the band that they're doing the studio musician work for. They're better than them, but they just didn't have that one break. They didn't have that one little it factor. They didn't have that ability to just kind of look on stage and just kind of wink an eye, and then a million people freak out because they just did it right. They don't have that one thing. And so it becomes much more of a luck of the draw. Everybody wants to be that because they're like, I can do whatever I want, but you don't, as you know. So I think that's where it kind of breaks down, is you got people who just don't want to work for it and want to do what they want to do and get fully compensated for it without realizing, well, what I want to do really adds no value to anybody. So why should I get compensated?
Yeah. That's a good point. This next one is under the section called race and colonialism. It's always funny when people complain about colonialism while they live in the greatest time in the history of known mankind under colonialism. But this one is police violence disproportionately targets black and brown communities to maintain capitalist order.
Yeah, and that's total bullshit. The actual FBI statistics, the actual everything that's out there. So if you look at the FBI statistics, what you'll find is that police officers are about 3 times more likely per capita per incident to shoot white folks. Okay, that's police officers of either race. So much more likely to shoot and injure or kill whites than they are blacks and browns. Just flat out. That's the statistics. That's from all the departments across the U.S. So it's not that, more black people are shot. No, they're not. They're not. Actually, more white folks are shot, and they're shot at a much higher rate. Conversely, at the same time, police officers are, I thought the last statistics I thought I saw were like 5 or 6 times more likely to be shot by a black or brown perpetrator, by a black or brown criminal than a white person. So black or brown are more likely to shoot police, or less likely. You're much more likely to get shot as a white person, and thus less likely to get shot as a black brown person, and you're much more likely to shoot a police officer as a black brown person than a white person. So when you add those two together, it's like, okay, white violence against police is much lower than brown violence against police. Police violence against whites is much higher than against black and browns. So I think where it comes down to, where people go, well, that doesn't matter, look at the number of arrests. Well, arrests and convictions come down to criminality. And it's not racist to look at the data and say, you know what, on average, black and brown people commit more crime than white folks do. And white folks actually cause more crime than Asians. Asians are the lowest crime rate group out there, right? So that's just pure statistics. That's not hatred. That's not racism. That's nothing. And it's not about hating or anything like that. It's looking at the raw statistics. So I think a lot of times they say, oh, the police are haters, the police are violence against black and brown because look how many they arrest and all that kind of stuff. Well, they arrest criminals. They don't do that to Asians because they don't commit crimes. They do it to whites less because we commit less crimes statistically. What is it? It's like 40% of all black men have been arrested and put in jail. I mean, that's a terrible statistic. It's a terrible thing that happens, but that's not because of the police being racist. That's because the culture there, disregards actions that would be considered legal, and they actually uphold or are willing to engage in actions that are illegal, and that results in arrest. So that's where it comes from. There's nothing about colonization or anything like that. In fact, the U.S. was a colony, and we threw off our colonizers called England, right? Haiti was a colony, and it threw off its colonizers called France. Why are we successful and Haiti is not? It's because Haiti slid immediately into autocracy and and tribal warfare, like, back in what was common in a lot of the Caribbean and in Africa at the time. And we did not. We moved forward. America really has never really had colonies. The few that we had was like, hey, the Philippines will take you over for a while. We'll turn you free. Every once in a while, Guam and America Samoa and Puerto Rico, they come up with like, hey, do you guys want to leave? Do you want to be a state? Whatever. They have that freedom, that choice. A lot of the colonies were from the old European countries, and most of them have gotten rid of all their colonies as well. Colonization is not necessarily a bad thing, is not necessarily a good thing. It could do both ways. So I think that becomes a big issue. But the violence against black and brown by police is not because of colonization or because of racism, because the data actually says the exact opposite, that they're going out of their way to not be racist. But when you have certain groups that commit an overwhelming number of the crimes, they're going to be an overwhelming number of arrests per capita. So,
Yeah, and this is a very frustrating situation because there's just so much nonsense associated with it. And I go to people, I do home health, so I go into people's houses and we can have better conversations than you could have at a hospital surrounded by other people where you're
yeah.
more apprehensive to bring up subjects and topics. And I do not seek a political discussion with my patients who are very clearly they're Marxist, but they don't even know what it is. Like they grew up in church, blah blah blah. Then nothing they do is like a Christian. They become very racist because they watch CNN and they tell them that the cops are trying to kill them. So there's a lot of issues surrounding the subject that's just based on bad information, lies, fear mongering. And so one thing I always say, this woman, this elderly black lady who we got along very well, but the subject of police came up and she said, we can't call the police, they'll just kill us.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think the police will just kill you. You're an 80-year-old lady. And she said, no, they will. They've done it before. And my thing is, okay, well, if you didn't ever have police, how would you ever reduce the crime in your neighborhood?
Hmm.
There's no other option. You're going to have the crime. So you can either have the police in your neighborhood lowering crime, or you're going to live with a high crime rate, in which case your lives will never improve. You'll always be at the very bottom of the economic ladder. You'll always be living in terror and fear and unrest. And there's also this that kind of bleeds into being pulled over too. I remember when I was in high school, Shannon Sharp,
Yeah. Yep.
tight end, he played for the Broncos.
Yes.
I
Yep.
always liked him because he's a fun guy. He had a fun
Hmm.
personality. Still does.
Yep.
Very charismatic guy. But then during the BLM stuff, which is where a lot of Black America was super propagandized, and it
Uh-huh.
became 100% emotional, stopped thinking. It's really sad to see that happen. It can happen to anybody. It's just, if I had to say one thing about the plight of Black America, I would say you are heavily targeted by propaganda. You must understand that. You don't have to buy into it,
Uh-huh.
but I remember this was probably shortly after George Floyd when they were very emotional. And he was showing a video of a young black man being pulled over and not complying. It always starts with not complying. There's your
Yep.
hint.
Yep.
Maybe if you complied, it wouldn't be a problem. Eat some humble pie. Let the guy with the gun and the law on his side call you a name. If they start calling me names, I'm gonna say yes, sir. I'll see you in court later. But right now, you're the police officer with the gun and literally all the power. I'm not doing anything that's going to get me shot or in prison. But it showed the young black man like not complying and then struggling, pulling his arm away when they tried. You've seen it 1,000 times. And Shannon Sharp was doing some commentary like, look, he knows that cop's going to kill him. So what's he supposed to do? What's he supposed to do? Just let him kill him? Yeah, he has to fight back. And he basically just did this, like, what to do when you get pulled over instructional video. And of course, his advice was, you got to fight back or they'll kill you. So it would be pretty imperative for everyone to work together and try to explain the power dynamics of law enforcement. If you
Yeah.
feel like they're treating you wrong, comply, 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 get you a lawyer, go back later. But now is not the time. And I think that it's primarily, and I'm talking like 98% propaganda that's causing these problems. And I'll say this
Hmm.
too, they'll say, well, yeah, they keep putting black people in prison and arresting them because, they make the things illegal that they like to do. So like hey, we all like to smoke crack. You made that illegal. And now
Hmm.
you're not letting us smoke crack. It's like, well, yeah, the law is if you have crack, you'll get arrested. I don't know if that's really the law, but it's
Yeah, it
illegal,
is.
right? So if you have crack and you're doing crack, you are a criminal. So you can choose to be defiant and say, I feel like I should be able to do this. But that's cool. You can do that. That is an option. You do have the ability to perform a crime and say, I think it's morally right to do this, so I'm going to do it, but you will pay the repercussions of that. But you also have the option of saying, you know what, crack is illegal. I know that I will get arrested for this. I know it's going to complicate my life significantly. I am going to not do crack anymore, but I'm going to lobby and get a bunch of people together and form this group that is pro crack, and we're going to try to make this legal. That's what you have to do here. If you don't like that, you need to go somewhere where you can either legally do crack or where there's no law at all and you can do whatever you want. Cool. We'll do one more question since it's been so shoddy.
I think they put all their effort into the app, not into the website,
Yeah,
the browser.
I think that's an accurate.
Stupid.
They need a consultation from Dan Wiggins Incorporated.
Yes, there
Okay,
we
so
go.
we'll do one more question, then we'll call it for now. So this is under gender and sexuality. So, these are going to be kind of wonky. This
Huh?
one, I've never heard this, but it's definitely on the surface a Marxist thing that a Marxist would say. Unpaid domestic labor by women subsidizes capitalism.
So
Have you heard that before? Have you heard that argument before?
I've heard similar kind of arguments before, basically saying, if a wife was paid for her, domestic work, she'd get $100,000 a year, right? That kind of a thing. Number one, that's highly debatable because I know what it takes to make 100K a year, and it's a lot. It subsidizes capitalism. It doesn't subsidize capitalism. Nothing subsidizes capitalism. Capitalism is simply a way that people exchange goods and money amongst themselves. It's not subsidizing at all. What it does, though, is the housewife or the wife who works at home, or my wife works, I work, and we both do house chores. It's things we do at home. Enable us to get ahead in our own personal lives with capitalism. So if you look at it, one of the first design partners I had, a first company I had back in the 90s, he had a PhD in nuclear magnetoresonance, was a postdoc at University of Washington, very, very smart man, right? And we did a lot of cool acoustic stuff together. And we decided we're going to go start a business, and we got a business going, doing it on the side. And his wife got pregnant, and they made the decision really quickly that he was going to be the stay-at-home dad. And it's because as a postdoc, he was making 50, 60K a year. She, on the other hand, had just made partner at Deloitte and Touche and was making like 300 large. So it's pretty obvious. It's like, okay, once she's done with maternity, Dave's the stay-at-home dad. Let's all just do it, right?
Significantly more money for this household if we do it.
Exactly. And so he took care of the house, cleaned the house, did the laundry, make sure the food was cooked because he loved to cook things like that thing too. So it's not about, oh, women are getting paid. It's a lot of times a person chooses to stay at home because it's better off for the system. And they did it because they're like, yeah, we have a couple kids and I would like to be home with the kids. I'd like the kids not to be raised by foreigners, and people that we don't know. And by foreigners, I don't mean like, oh, people from overseas. I mean people that are just like down the street you have no knowledge of, just dropping them off at daycare all day long and not knowing what goes on. We want to take care of our kids until they get to college. At least they get till into school, and even then make sure things are going right and see how I can work around it. So in that case, wasn't capitalism that he was enabling. He was enabling his wife to maintain a high-paying job that made them much more successful, both of them together. Whereas if he's like, well, I'm not doing the housewife, you have to do equal amount of housework with me and things like that, she probably could not have kept that job, would have taken an economic hit. He would have taken an economic hit. They'd be worse off overall, and the kids probably were worse off. So again, it gets to the whole point of like, you don't value my work, you don't value what I do. I get that. That happens a lot of times. I'm sure, the husband, a lot of times you out there mows the lawn for 3 hours and the wife comes out and goes, you missed that spot over there. And it's like, you didn't recognize what I did. It can be frustrating, but it's still a better thing because he enjoyed doing it, kind of some of it, at least the first half of it. And it saves money. So it's about managing your assets and your time and doing things correctly. And in this case, raising kids with a brilliant father at home to challenge him and push him, get him, way ahead in school, help him out in school, all that kind of stuff, worked out great. So staying and working at home doesn't enable capitalism. It allows a couple to better grow under capitalism. So basically, you could flourish under capitalism if one does. And statistically, two-parent households where one parent stays home with the kids are the economic highest performers. And it's not, well, because they're rich, they can afford to do it. It's like, no, they did it and they became rich because the one who was making more money ended up being able to focus almost exclusively on what makes money and does the best thing for the whole family instead of trying
Yeah.
to fracture themselves.
And I know enough about Marxism and communism to know the goal here with that claim, and that is to get women out of the household and into
Hmm.
working. I understand that
Hmm.
they hate the nuclear family. They hate it. They can't have that. That creates a stable, successful capitalistic society, and that's their greatest enemy for whatever reason. But I don't understand the claim that a a stay-at-home mom is helping capitalism. What is their claim?
Well, she's not helping capitalism. They say it a lot of times. They say like capitalism. They use capitalism more as a an adjective of a person. Oh, you're a capitalist. Everybody's a capitalist. If you've ever negotiated anything in your life, if you've ever gone to a farmer's market and said, "Well, okay, your oranges are $3 for a pound. What if I buy 10 pounds? How about not $30? How about $25?" You just engaged in capitalism. Bought anything in the world, you've engaged in capitalism. You made a fair trade of your labor that was turned into dollars. You gave them to somebody else who took their labor to create a product that you bought with your dollars. So it was a labor exchange. That's what capitalism is. Money is just a placeholder in that whole barter system kind of thing. Makes it a nice equalized barter. I don't have to carry around a bunch of chickens and pigs and goats with me to figure out how I'm going to buy your cow and your corn. We exchange them for dollars and we trade dollars. So everybody who's ever done an exchange or a purchase of anything has engaged in capitalism and will engage in capitalism. Even tribes do that amongst themselves, trading. So they're trying to break it down. What they're trying to do is foment hatred and envy between a husband and wife, between parents. And they want to do that for two reasons. Number one, there's the old Marxist approach of, if you give me 8 years with your kids, I'll make sure that your kids believe nothing you do and believe what I want them to do. If you're not an active, involved stay-at-home parent, the chances of you being involved in a much closer way with what your kids are learning, what your kids are doing, and before school, after school activities, what they're learning in school is much, much, much less, which means the state controls it. Now remember, under capitalism and Marxism, the whole goal of Marxism is the state is God. That's Karl Marx. I want the state to be God. There is no God. We're all atheists. The state is God. So if I can get them fully indoctrinated, number one. Number two, it also will tend to put more women into the workforce. And what does that mean? More workers, which means what? More tax dollars. So the state has the money coming in so it can grow bigger from the additional taxpayers. And the next generation, it gets to completely indoctrinate and build up in the state is everything, the individual is nothing approach and continue that through. So that's the beauty, that's the goal of communism, and you see that happen a lot of times. So that's why they push it that way. But it's not enabling capitalism; it's enabling their partner to succeed better under capitalism because they're already in capitalism. They're already renting a place. They're already paying people for food. They're already buying power from the government. They're already doing all that stuff already. They're engaging in capitalism already. It's not enabling them to do capitalism; it's enabling them to succeed under capitalism, which should be the goal.
Yeah, I feel like this one might. I think that might be such a not you, but the Marxist statement. I think it might be so stupid that I can't understand it because it doesn't make sense.
It makes sense if you look at it from a standpoint
Trying to
of
make me believe, steel man it so well
okay,
that I understand what they're saying.
yeah. So what they're trying to say is, look, if she didn't have to stay at home, right? If she could go out and pursue her own, if the wife, I'm saying the wife, for instance, let me use my friend Dave. He didn't have to stay at, if he didn't have to stay at home with the kids and do all the housework and something else, then he could succeed and flourish in whatever he had chose to do, and the world will be better for it. By him having to stay at home and take care of the kids, he's forcing his wife to go also and engage in more aggressive capitalistic approaches where she might want to have been a singer instead or a painter. But no, she has to go out and earn more money because staying at home. So it's in a way enabling capitalism to control their lives because his wife has to make a lot of money now because he's a stay at home and doesn't do everything at home. So she has to engage in capitalism hardcore to be able to let them survive. Whereas if there was no capitalism and everything was just provided by the government, they could both pursue their own truths and their own paths of what they want to do. So from that standpoint, I could see where they're coming at. The fallacy there is, number one, you don't get to pursue your own truths, right? Under communism, you're told what you're going to pursue. And number two, people tend to actually take bigger risks when they have an at-home spouse taking care of things. And they take the bigger risks, they're calculated risks because they're able to focus on it more. Your mind, you're not spending half your day in your mind going, okay, what do I got to pick up at the grocery store on the way home? Did I make sure and pay the utility bill on time? What do I got to do? A lot of those things, I got to pick up the kids on Thursday after soccer practice. Oh, no, wait, that's getting moved to Wednesday. All that's taken out of your head when you have one parent focusing on that and another parent focusing on how can I maximize the income coming in, you tend to succeed better. They're trying to pitch that as a bad thing because you don't get to pursue exactly what you want. But again, it gets back to the point of, well, if you have kids, you kind of have to take care of the kids. So you don't have a choice there. You have to engage some sort of capitalism unless you have the communist approach of, well, the kids are actually wards of the state. The
Of course.
government takes care of them, so it doesn't matter. So I could just have a baby. Me and my wife can have a couple kids, let the state raise them from the age of, basically 3 months on, and they might come and stay home with me, at night. They're given 3 meals a day at schools. They're educated, taken care of by people at schools, out of my control. I see them in the evenings and things like that. And that's it. Now I'm free to go do what I want. Okay, but at the same time, what's my child learning? What's my child doing? How is that even my child? As I've told people, is like at that point, I'm a sperm donor. I'm not a father
Yeah, absolutely.
because I am not fathering the kids, and that's not good for cultural growth and passing down heritage. And so, but that's what has to be broken if you want to have a communist takeover and replace all your God, all your wisdom, all your ancestors, all your belief, all the people you respect. You want to replace all those with government.
Think
I
that
have to break it down.
I think the reason it confuses me is because the alternative is both parents participate in capitalism.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
either the statement doesn't really make sense. It's like, oh, you're making her stay at home. Well, that's helping capitalism. She should go out and participate in capitalism too, so as to hurt capitalism. I don't even understand what they're trying to say. Either way,
And what they go ahead.
I mean, I completely understand the intention. They do want to break up the nuclear family. They want both people to be paying taxes. They want your kids to be controlled by the Marxists at school and all that. They hate the family unit. I get the intention. It's just that the statement of having a stay-at-home mother is contributing to capitalism doesn't make sense because the alternative would be that the mother is out working as well, which is your whole complaint is that people are getting jobs and starting businesses.
And they got to understand at the end of the day, capitalism is simply a system, an economic system only, where people can agree to exchange goods and labor for whatever they agree is a fair price. Fundamentally capitalist, fair trade, capitalism. And that's the underpinning of it. And what that implies, and this is where people get bored, is like, oh, well, people are just going to hoard money and make themselves richer. Why do you do anything? Why do you go ahead and say, you know what, I'm not going to eat cactus leaves for the next 3 months. I want a nice pizza. Why don't you just eat cactus leaves in your backyard? Well, no, you're going to go in, you want something else beyond what you got. Capitalism is how do I make those exchanges, make those trades, and use them to better my position? And I'm using my own capital to grow. And sometimes that means going to my friend who's like, hey, you know what? You don't have the ability to do what I do. You see, I'm pretty profitable. If I had some of your money, if you want to invest in me, buy some of my time and my abilities, we could grow even faster. I'm now using his capital to grow. And again, that's an exchange between myself and him. I am selling him a part of my time, a part of my hours for some of his hours that have been turned into money that he's given me. And then I try to make it further for both of us. So they're trying to break that down. When you understand that at that level, that's ultimately what capitalism is leveraging assets, either individually or communally, as agreed by the community. Marxism and communism is essentially forced capitalism. It's we're going to leverage your assets, but I get to decide how they're leveraged, and I get to decide how much I'm going to take from you to leverage.
Slavery.
But it's the same. Yeah, it's slavery. But it's the same thing. At a fundamental level, all capitalism is how am I managing labor and time? And it's slavery and government. It's the same thing. It's just only one person in the equation gets to make a decision about how the time's managed to both sides. So at the end of the day, you'll never have an economic system unless there's an exchange of labor. And the question is that exchange of labor voluntary, as we have in capitalistic Western societies, or is it mandatory, as we have under slavery in communist countries? That's the whole difference.
Man, I constantly cannot fathom how we have Marxists here, but it makes sense because when everything's so great and even the poor people don't have to worry about losing their home or where they're going to get their next
hmm
meal, you just start looking for problems, and I think that's kind of what happened in America. Dan, I don't know what was causing the technical issues, but I do know I haven't restarted my computer in a week, so that could be a contributing factor. So hopefully
I don't
next
know.
time we'll have this stuff smoothed out. But
No
anyway,
problem.
let's try to. You got any availability next week?
Yeah, I do. My Fridays tend to be pretty open in the afternoons.
Okay. Well, I'll text you next week and we'll talk about it. But yeah, this is fun, man. We'll do something similar next time because I think this is a good
Absolutely.
format. Give you a statement. Doesn't have to be woke. It can be a different situation. But yeah, this is fun,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate it.
All right. Cool. Hey, you have a good one, sir.
Yes, sir.
Take care.